Welcome back to This Is Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. We've just spoken with Professor Biodun Ogunyemi on the recently conducted UTME by the Joint Admissions and Matriculations Board, reporting after the exercise that about 76% of the candidates could not score up to a minimum of 200. And that in any case, this is just the situation. Even if there were improvements in terms of automation and, respecting the rights of persons who took part in that examination. Now, joining me for this conversation from the Abuja studio is a spokesperson of the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, Dr. Fabian Benjamin. Dr. Benjamin, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Nigerians. Well,
Dr. Benjamin, I don't know whether you listened to Professor Ogunyemi. He was saying that the failure rate in the UTME, nobody should be surprised. That after all, the entire country has macro issues. And those macro issues are bound to show up in virtually every aspect of our lives. And many Nigerians are really wondering, how can 76% of candidates sitting for history, biology, economics, can't even score up to 200? Well, you are more familiar with the report issued by JAMB. Could you just take us through the highlights of that report and whether indeed we should be alarmed that so many people can't even pass admissions exams?
Thank you very much. There is nothing wrong in analyzing performance of any exercise, but the first issue that one will have to bear in mind is to understand the purpose for which such exercise is undertaken. If you look at our examination and you begin to analyze this without understanding the basic principles for which we conduct this examination, you may likely be misleading the public. The purpose and intent of an issue of every exercise is very critical in analyzing such an exercise. Otherwise, you begin to concentrate on the disruptive element of such exercise. Our examination is not a pass-fail examination. It is a selection exercise. And what do I mean by that? If you look at the statistics that we keep reeling out and discussing out there, you will discover that a reasonable number of these candidates score less than 200 and above. They have not really failed this examination because it depends on what you want to do with such an exercise. Our examination, just as I've said earlier, is a selection exercise. You can only say a candidate has failed if in the final analysis, for the purpose of which he sat this examination, is not achieved. I will give you an instance. We want to celebrate candidates that have scored 300 and above. And I want to shock you that there are some of them that may likely not even be admitted with that high score, depending on where they want to go. And some candidates who have scored less than 200 will end up succeeding and being admitted. For instance, if I want to read physics today, and I have 180, 200, I may likely gain admission. And somebody that wants to read medicine, for instance, in University of Lagos, and he has 320, he may not be admitted. Because if you want to go into University of Lagos with 320, on the ranking order in University of Lagos, you may be number 300. And maybe the carrying capacity for that program may just be around 200. So it depends on the subscription to the program that you are aspiring to go. It depends on the university that you want to go. It depends on the tertiary institution, not Polytechnic, College of Education, or IEI that you will want to attend. Let me tell you that examination is only a necessity because we have not found a way that we can ensure that every candidate is given equal opportunity, fairness, and whatnot. Because the founders of JAM, that's the sixth first generation university then, came together to say, look, subscription is beginning to grow from less than 100,000 in 1978. It grew to what we have today, about 2 million candidates that we're examining for this exercise. How do we get a body that can coordinate this exercise so that we can have time to concentrate on the academic work that we are doing and stuff like that? That was how JAM came into being. It was never the intention of government. It was the idea of the universities that they should have a central body that will control this exercise. Examination became a vehicle. If you look at the name of JAMB, it's Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board. If examination was part of the exercise, the examination would have been part of the name. But examination is not there because even at the point of conception, examination was not the issue. But examination became the vehicle of achieving equity. Because without examination, it will be difficult to ensure that at least every candidate is given a level playing ground. So when you look at this exercise within the context of failure and pass, you may get it absolutely wrong. So even on comparative term, if you look at this result, vis-a-vis what we had in 2003, 2002, you will see that there is a slight increase in terms of outcome. Because in 2003, those that scored 300 and above, they were just barely around 0.3%. And in 2024, we have about 0.5%, 8,400 and something. In 2003, they were just about 5,000 thereabout. And likewise in 2002, they were less than that. So there is a slight increase in performance. But I don't want us to dwell on the issue of performance because a lot of people will get it wrong. Because our examination is a selection examination. Just for instance, I was telling somebody today that if Arise TV wants to recruit staff and they conduct examination, because the first principle is that somebody must be employed, somebody must be admitted. Whatever the performance is, we cannot say, okay, this year because candidates have done poorly, and the universities of Polytechnic College of Education and IAS will not admit candidate. Somebody must be admitted. And the performance is just to rank them in order of this admission. Because if we have sufficient spaces, in any case we have them, by the time you put the spaces in College of Education, IAS, Polytechnic and universities, the spaces are enough to carry everybody. But the challenge is that a reasonable number of these candidates will want to go to certain programs that at least their own preference. For instance, medicine, law, engineering. Every candidate in sciences today, a reasonable number of them, so to say, will want to go into medicine, and then others engineering. Likewise in arts, they want to read law and other programs. So how do we begin to allocate those spaces to candidates? Because what qualifies a candidate for admission is not the UTME result, but the O-level as defined by the Arusha Convention. That is what later became what we know as Addis Ababa Convention. The 5 O-level credit is what qualifies you to be admitted. If tomorrow we wake up and we have sufficient spaces in some of these highly subscribed programs like medicine and law, and we have spaces to accommodate everybody that aspires to go there, and they have their 5 O-level credit, including maths and English, we may likely not be doing the examination. And somebody will want to ask us, okay, if you're not doing examination, then what is the purpose of the existence of the Joint Admission and Matriculation Board? Coordination. We have similar bodies elsewhere. They don't do examination. All they do is the candidate apply through them, and they aggregate the data of each candidate, depending on where he applies to, and send this thing to the schools. And the school conduct this admission and return back the statistics, the outcome of whatever exercise they've done to the board for record purpose and stuff like that. But we are doing admission because until now, we have not found a reliable process, method that we can ensure that at least every candidate is given that satisfaction that he desired, that look, I am not cheated.
Dr. Fabian, I would like you to speak to a number of additional issues. One, the complaint about parents going to write UTME for their children. 2, one of the achievements claimed in the report by JAMB is that due to increased automation, that there has been a reduction in infractions. But in the Akoko area of Ondo State, we were told that some of the candidates could not write the exams because of network problem. So if you could just speak to those issues, and then the fact that a number of people will say, why is it that if somebody scores 300, 350, may not be able to get admitted? And yet in some parts of this country, some people gain admission for university education with less than 100. And somebody from Anambra will score 350 will not gain admission. I think you still have to clarify that.
Let me start with the last one. That also is misleading because if you look at our process, we have conducted examination now. The next thing that will follow is what we call the policy meeting. The policy meeting is being chaired by the Minister of Education, and all stakeholders are there, are invited, and they attend the meeting. At that meeting, we agree on what is called the minimum admission score. That is, every institution will send what they feel that is their own minimum, and then we arrive at a unified minimum at the policy meeting. What that means is that whatever we come up with for universities, for instance, if we say 140, no institution will be allowed to admit any candidate less than that 140. So it is not correct, and it will not be allowed for candidate for any university to admit candidate below whatever is agreed at the policy meeting. But the issue of somebody scoring 300 and not being admitted, yes, it's possible because it depends on where you want to go to. And I always say this, that universities all over the world are ranked on their own, merit. You don't just say in a country and every university will be on the same level. No, the university will grow at its own pace and have its own name, define its own standard. If you go to Harvard today or Oxford or Yale today, within the precinct of those universities, there are other universities that are not even known. And even when you know those universities, their own admission requirement is not the same with Harvard or the same with Cambridge. Because Harvard or Cambridge or Yale, they are Ivy League. At least they are known for what they are. They've grown to become whatever they are. And those other universities will also be allowed to grow at their own pace to become whatever they want to become. So universities are known by the kind of requirement that they want. If university in Sokoto, for instance, or a university in Kano, for instance, wants to admit candidate with 140, you cannot force the university in Sokoto to say, you two must admit by 140. We're talking about 200. Some people will say, minimum score 140 is low and all this thing. There are universities in Nigeria today that you cannot even get into if you don't have anything more than 200. The 200 may be the minimum requirement. Talking about parents and all those things, the desperation these days is becoming very alarming. Because you see, most of these parents, they want their children to go into some of these highly subscribed programs, medicine, law, and engineering. And because they know, ab initio, that these kids they have cannot measure up. And they want to use all manner of methods to see how they can at least support whatever knowledge that their children have and stuff like that. But the good news is that we have put in place checks, stopgaps that will at least fish such people out. We've arrested the father that came to write the examination for his own son. That became news because he's a father. There are others that we've arrested that they are not fathers, they are just exam takers who have come, who are paid to come and take exam here and there. But in the final analysis, there is a sharp reduction in the examination infraction. Be it impersonation, be it whatever you can think about, smuggling of foreign materials into examination hall and all this. If you look at what we've had in the last 5 years and what we just experienced this year, you will discover that we just have cases, clear, established, prima facie cases of examination misconduct, just about 81 candidates. And then we are still investigating anyway. But that is a drastic reduction from whatever we've had in the past. And I want to also make this clear. When people talk about a candidate in Sokoto, a candidate in the East, this one coming with a lesser score and all those things, we have admission is conducted on 3 plank principles. We have what we call the merit, which is 45, and merit is merit. If you have 10 children and they are on top in the university, nobody will question why they are admitted. And merit is blind anywhere you come from. It doesn't matter if you want to go to University of Lagos. Once you're on top, certainly you'll be picked. And as a regulatory agency, we ensure that at least every institution comply with that. The next flank is the one we talk about, catchment area, which is 35%. And universities are localized. Every university has states and all those things that at least is its own catchment area. And then the next one is what we call the educational less developed advantage state. These affirmative actions, it happens everywhere. I have one of my former registrars went to University of Cornell in those days, not because he was top in his class or whatever, but because at the point there was slow that was reserved for the blacks. If today Harvard admits and there is nobody in Africa, I bet you they will go around to see how they can get people from Africa at least to come up. That is what university is all about. The universality of university must be adhered. You must have somebody from all over the country. And in fact, what we are doing now, we are even going out of our own mandate to encourage vice chancellors to ensure that at least they have foreigners in their school. And that explains why if you look at the award we give, the NOTAP award that we give to the institution, there is a particular criteria that we've ironed out, that you must have foreign candidates, certain number of foreign candidates in your university. Because a university cannot be said to be a university if all the people we have are just within your localities. So a serious vice chancellor that want to actually reflect that name, we even go out of his bound. I know of certain universities, some vice chancellors that will even give scholarships to some foreigners, nearby countries like Cotonou and all this, so that they will have people from those countries coming into their universities and so like that. So when people begin to challenge, if you have a university, for instance, University of Nigeria and Nsukka, and you don't have somebody from Sokoto, you don't have somebody from Maiduguri, I bet you that will not be a university. It should reflect the identity of our nation. Everybody in Nigeria should be seen in that particular university.
Dr. Fabian, finally, and briefly, talking about inclusion, because that's the subject you just addressed now. One of the things in the statement by JAMB is that there was, an increase in the number of female candidates, 50.6% this year, and also persons with disabilities. Now, can you speak to that issue about inclusion from the gender perspective and from the non-discrimination against persons with disabilities? Please, as briefly as possible.
Well, from the gender perspective, I think that is accidental. It has been so over the period of time, and usually it used to be from states in the east like Imo, but of recent, it is encroaching into some states, even in the southwest and stuff like that. It's accidental. But the person living with disability is deliberate, because we are also doing some things to ensure that we encourage these categories of citizens, so that at least they can also have a share of this cake. If you follow us, you would have noted that during the registration, we ensured that at least we gave them free form, though we started with this 2024 registration and the system was not very well organized. So what we did was that we urged them to pay for the form, but during the examination, all those that registered and paid, their money were refunded to them. And during the exercise, we have a group we call the JAMB Equal Opportunity Group, headed by very eminent Professor Kebukola. And this group is dedicated to taking care of this particular citizen, so that they will write this examination under a very conducive atmosphere. And what we do is that, especially for those ones that are visually impaired, we encourage them to come with one of a guide. And this guide, the candidate and the guide are accommodated at our own expense. We provide transportation for them. The JAMB form, registration form is 3,500. But at the end of the day, what we spend on each of these candidates living with disability is more than 30,000 naira, depending on where you're coming from. Some even 60, 70, up to 100,000 naira, depending on which part of the country you're coming from, because we accommodate them, we feed them, we transport them with their own guide. So that has also increased the number of candidates that are living with disability that want to write this examination. Because some of them in the past, we complain of funding. But with what we are doing, many of them are coming up now to aspire at least to attend. And then after the examination, we also follow up with them to ensure that for those who have met the minimum requirement are actually admitted into programs of their choice. Because over time, we discovered that some universities or polytechnic and college of education begin to segregate against this candidate. Somebody will tell you, you're not seeing, how can you be a lawyer? Or you're not cited, how can you be a doctor, and stuff like that. And then we also step in to ensure that some of these stereotype issues are not there, so that this particular citizen can also go into whatever they want to be. If they want to be lawyers, doctors, and all this, they are free to do whatever they want to do, provided that the institution has the capacity to train such persons.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Fabian Benjamin, spokesperson of the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board.